Okay, where are we? Kia ora, talofa lava, and welcome to another episode of the RUCK, a podcast where we discuss all things rugby. I'm the host of the RUCK, Stacey, and today we welcome one of our regulars and knowledgeable rugby man, Joey. Joey, thanks for coming on, brother.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for having the City of the Future.
Yes, that's right. I got to keep remembering to say promote the City of the Future. So before we get into it, I'll just take care of some housekeeping things. So our website is up and going, so check us out there, www.weswesnet.com. And also you can follow the Counter-Ruck on Twitter and Facebook, as well as our network YouTube channel. So give us a follow there and give us a like. So, mate, Joey, a lot has happened since our last podcast that I wanted to go through. So Kanaloa, they've begun their legal proceedings against the New Zealand Rugby Union and issued a notice about potential breaches. So we'll look at that. Also, the Mitre 10 semi-finals will start this weekend. So we'll do some previews and get some of your predictions from you. But I suppose we'll start by looking at the absolute rugby lesson that the All Blacks received on the weekend from the Pumas. So Argentina, they were really impressive, and they beat the All Blacks 25-15 in Australia to win their first match of the Tri Nations. So what did you make of that first up game for the Pumas and just the game in general?
I thought it was quite unfortunate as an All Blacks fan to watch that, but for the global game, I think it was great to see a team like Argentina defend the way they did. I think if you look at the stats of the captain himself, he didn't miss one of his 11 tackles he made. I think he made a few line breaks, but he also stole the ball on a couple of occasions, so especially in crucial moments as well. So it was a really good game to watch.
Yeah, that captain, he was the best player on the field by quite a mile, I thought. And I thought he showed up some of the forwards where he looked pretty ordinary in that front. You know, you got to give Argentina a lot of credit as well, so I don't want it to be just the All Blacks were poor. But some of the disciplinary issues that the All Blacks had, so I know Sanchez, that first five, he kicked 6 penalties, so that was 18 points. And I think that's 2 weeks in a row. So also against Australia, they conceded a lot of players there, a lot of points there. But what did you make of the All Blacks, and what do you think is going wrong? So that's back-to-back losses for the first time since 2011, I believe. And I think those back-to-back losses back then were part of, the just before the World Cup, where the All Blacks were still doing some tinkering in the build-up.
I think if you look at the game or the team as a collective, you look at each individual performance and how it contributed to the end result. Across the board, bar maybe Joe Moody and Sam Cane, I think the whole team all had pretty average games. And, they had a bit of injection off the bench, but even then, it's like they just carried on with the abysmal performance that was happening before they got on. My thoughts on the All Blacks in terms of their attack, they just seem to be nullified by a really inspired defense. Whether or not Mario Ledesma and Checker and their team really did their homework on defense, who knows? But whatever they did worked. And if I was Australia, I'd be pretty scared right now about the prospect of playing the Pumas.
Yeah. I think the good thing about that is it's probably opened up the competition, because now I'm not really sure who's going to win it, which is a good point to be in, I suppose. But one thing I wanted to ask you about, Joey, is before this game, I actually thought that this was our best team, but now I'm not sure. Not after that performance. So I suppose, do you think that we need to make some more changes again, or maybe change the coach, or I don't know. Like, we're looking for answers now from the All Blacks, and I suppose, have you got any suggestions in terms of maybe selections or
I think
personnel changes or anything?
stick with the same squad. Obviously, they can't stick with or they can't bring Tu'ungafasi back, and he's on his way home as one of those 3 players that they're sending back. But yeah, try and stick with the same team that played against Argentina, if possible. Maybe inject 1 or 2 on the bench, game changer wise. I really feel like Hoskins probably deserves to start next week or in the next game. When he came on, he did well. I thought.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
What's the name? Artie had an average game compared to the week before, I thought. There was some niggly stuff from the likes of Shannon Frizzell, but if you look at his game outside of the jersey pulling that happened, I think you can see that you've got to justify being able to get into the niggly stuff with the performance you're having. If you're having an absolute blinder and somebody's having a go at you, you can pay it some attention, but I think discipline let us down in a lot of areas, not only the argy-bargy stuff, for lack of better description.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's also important, like when you mentioned Hoskins. So one of the issues that I've got with the selections is they're picking players out of position. So as much as I rate Adi and I think he's bloody awesome, I still think of him as a 7 who's really playing 8 more than an out-and-out 8. So yeah, I agree with that. For some of the selection changes I would like to see, is I want to see specialists played in their right position. So I would also make that change of Hoskins. I would probably move Geordie off the right wing. I'd either pick him at fullback or get rid of him and find a proper right wing. Maybe Jordan, or maybe give Severese a go. And also Jack Goodhue at 12. I'm not sure if that's his best position either. So I don't know if they could pick Lomape, who was at least a 12, but I don't know if he's played well enough to get another go. But yeah, I think they should be looking at playing specialists as opposed to just picking their best 15 and try to shoehorn them into some jobs, which I don't think is working that well.
Absolutely. And look, they were undone by a really determined defense. A defense that just wouldn't let anything through. They didn't even have to be like men possessed, which usually is the kind of defense that teams like South Africa play with. Argentina just knew what they wanted to do. They trained towards it, and I think a few of the interviews had the captain saying that, the coach saying that they have been putting themselves in position to win these types of games or put on these types of performances since January of this year. I've seen a lot of what the Argentinian boys have been doing, and for a lot of them, 4 months of quarantine, isolation. They've been putting in the 1%ers, putting in the hard yards with what limited resources they have. And I think that just speaks to the sacrifice that they've had to give up and make.
Yeah, I agree. I think these, I don't even know where to go. I was quite shocked by their performance, but I was just looking at this coach. So he's won 40% of his games, old Fozzie, and just the 5 previous coaches before that, they all won their first 5 games at least. And Hansen, it took him 37 tests before he had 2 losses. So I'm not sure about this guy Foster. And I heard this thing on the radio this morning. They were talking about Brad Moore, who Foster, he really chased him, and now he's taken over as, I think he's the forwards coach or something like that with the All Blacks, and he lost 17 games in a row with Southland. So his record as a coach is pretty poor. And we know Fozzie's record with the Chiefs was, from down your neck of the woods there, wasn't the best as well. So what do you think about the coaching stuff? What would you be doing if you were the New Zealand Rugby Union? Would you be pulling the trigger early? Would you be giving him the year, or seeing he's got a 2-year deal? So
Look, it's not panic stations just yet. I mean, he has got a 2-year deal, which he has to prove himself for that final year leading into the next World Cup. And I think a lot of pundits did realise when he was first appointed, hey, look, we could look at it as, oh, here's this really useless coach who has no results to show for being placed in the top job for the ABs, our top team. Or, a lot of other pundits are saying, look, it's 2 years of the worst. He can, blood some new talent, which he seems to be doing, and, get some combinations going for some good momentum leading into the next World Cup. I think, upon his initial selection, we always knew he wasn't going to be great, or, he wasn't going to exactly live up to the benchmark of the great Ted or Shag, So I understand these results are going to happen, and I just didn't realize it was going to be as early as early in his tenure.
Yeah, yeah. I think just for me, because I'll go back to that game. You talked about the defense a few times from Argentina, and it reminded me a bit of that semi-final loss to England, where the defense was just so good and the All Blacks had no answers. And Fozzie's from that era of Hansen as well, and he's sort of a continuation of the same ideas. So it looks like they're still stuck in similar spots because they haven't refreshed the coaching staff. They haven't got fresh ideas. It's sort of like a continuation of what wasn't working before, and that's sort of one of the things. It's going to be interesting to see what does happen with Fozzie, because you're right, the New Zealand rugby public will not put up with more of this level of garbage. So he has to basically start coming right pretty quickly. Starting with that next game against Argentina, which is going to be quite interesting, because Argentina, hopefully they can maintain this rage, although we saw with Australia in that first up game against the All Blacks, they played pretty good, and then they sort of fell off a bit. So it's going to be interesting to see. But that Pablo Matera, the captain, that was one of the best performances I've seen against the All Blacks from a forward for a long time. So he was bloody awesome.
Yeah.
I just got some stuff here. So the All Blacks only had one line break, which Caleb Clark got, which speaks to what you're talking about before with the defence, and the 10 penalties they conceded, which really hurt them. Some of them stupid ones, like Dane Coles gave away a stupid one for slapping, and you talked about Frizzell as well. And then just on the back of those penalties, Sanchez, he got 18 points on penalties alone, and that's going to, in Test match rugby especially, that's going to be pretty critical. So, yeah, a lot for the All Blacks to come up with. Any other final words on this AB's Argentina game before we move on?
I think, So poor Fozzie. I have called him Foster the imposter, but and it's unfortunate that he's proved me right. But I do believe in giving the current head coach a chance, and let's see what the rest of the year. I mean, the rest of how many games have we got left? One, two.
We've got one more game for the year, and that's it.
Let's see what that next game looks like, if they can redeem themselves and make Fozzie look good. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, interesting times ahead. It's been a while since the All Blacks have fallen back this far to the rest of the pack. So come on, Fozzie, mate, you need to buck it up. But hey, maybe he might get sacked, and we might get Gatland or someone like that, which wouldn't be too bad. I know you're a fan of Gatland. I am too, actually, so I'll put that out there. So am I. So I think that could be a silver lining if that was happen. But yes, some good points there, and I'll forward a copy of this podcast onto Fozzie so he can get some coaching tips. But with that in mind, we'll have a look at the upcoming semi-finals in our domestic competition. So that's the Mitre 10 Cup. So this weekend in the championship, we've got Otago hosting Northland on Friday night, and then Hawke's Bay at home against Taranaki. And in the Premiership, we've got Auckland hosting Waikato and Tasman hosting Bay of Plenty. And those are both Saturday games as well. So, we'll have a quick look at these games and get some predictions. Mike, so have you got any thoughts on any of those those four games?
The one's coming.
Yeah, these 4 semi-finals. Well, maybe we'll look at the championship first. So that's Otago hosting Northland and Hawke's Bay against Taranaki. I think if we remember back to our first week on the tips, you had Otago winning that the championship. If that rings a bell, does that sound about right? I'm sure you had Otago winning it, and I
No,
think I
that
had
was Cam.
Taranaki winning it. Yeah,
That was
yeah,
Cam.
I
Cam
think.
had Otago winning it, I think.
Oh, okay, okay.
I think I had Auckland.
Yeah, that was the Premiership, the Championship, which is the second division.
Oh, sorry.
Did
Yes,
you have
yes,
Otago?
yes.
You had
Yeah, you're
Otago
right.
winning that second division. Yeah.
I did have Otago winning. Yeah.
Well, they got a good chance. Yeah, they're hosting Northland. So, mate, I suppose you got to stick with your pick. Yeah.
Sticking with that pick. Yep. Against my beloved Taniwha.
Yes, yes. I know you got a secret soft spot for them. Yeah, Otago. They've had a bit of a mixed bag. I'm just pulling their season up now. Actually, a lot of these teams in the championship, you can actually see a bit of a divide between the top and the bottom division there. But it's going to be interesting. Otago, I know what's his name, your man Josh Ioane, he got ripped up a little bit for some mediocre performances of late. So he'll be hoping to have a big game.
Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah. And they got was it Koroya? I watched that game on the weekend. He had quite a good game too. So it's going to be quite interesting. I'm just trying to pull up their standings. Yeah, but I think Otago. Yeah, I'd actually quite like that shot. I think Otago, particularly at home, they should be pretty. They should be pretty good there. Yeah, they finished second on the table. So 6 wins, 4 losses. That's not too bad actually.
So
Yeah.
Hawke's
What
Bay are
about our
still
next
on the
game?
top,
So
aren't
we'll
they?
both agree on that. We both like Otago for that one.
Hawke's Bay is still
Yeah,
on the top
and
right now, right?
they're playing Taranaki, so that's first against fourth in this weekend.
And
And
Otago's
just
second versus third. Yeah.
and just on that, I think Hawke's Bay is it Hawk? Yeah, Hawke's Bay. They've just released free entry to that semi-final, and just trying to thank all the crowd and the supporters who have been with them right
Is
throughout
that
the season.
right?
So if you're in that part of if you're in that part of the country, check out a free game of rugby, a top level game too.
Well,
So any thoughts on that one, Hawke's Bay and Taranaki?
you have to go with the Bay. Just because of the great run they've had, they've been able to defend the shield,
Mm,
you know, against some
yeah,
formidable teams.
yeah. They've won 4 of their last 5 as well, so they're coming in pretty hot
Yeah,
as well, which is
yeah,
which augurs well. But I did pick Taranaki at the start of the season, so I feel like even though I agree with everything you said, Hawke's Bay probably will take it out. I'm going to stick with my prediction just so hopefully I
yeah,
can see that one through.
yeah.
We'll look at these premiership games. So Auckland hosting Waikato.
Auckland will still be on
Any
top of
thoughts?
the table, won't they?
Yeah, Auckland's top. Waikato finished 4th equal, and they got through on the count back on the head-to-heads. So that they snuck in there.
Wow.
Yes, Auckland at home, yeah, against Waikato. So Waikato and Wellington finished equal 4th.
Is that
Uh,
right?
yeah, but Waikato beat Wellington during the season, and that was the clincher to get them through. So,
Oh, okay. So, obviously, my heart's with Auckland.
yeah,
So I'm going to stick with Auckland. And so is my head. My head's with Auckland on this one. Tasman have been a bit of a surprise. I thought they'd be able to keep up their consistency this whole season, but they haven't managed to sneak up top of the table for a while.
Yeah, I'm with you on Auckland. Auckland, look, they look the best team. What's his name? Salisi Rayasi. He's been bloody awesome.
Yes, he's
And
the name on a lot of mouths there.
yeah, he's unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which way you go, but he's with the Hurricanes for Super Rugby.
Is that right?
I'm not sure why he's not with us, but the Blues. But yeah, he's been probably the player of the tournament, I think. So yeah, Auckland at home, that'll be pretty gutted, pretty hard to beat. But just on that, so Waikato got through on a comeback, which I mentioned earlier, having beaten Wellington mid-season. And you talked about the players that are coming home. So there's 3 guys from the All Blacks coming home. Tuonga Fasti, who you mentioned, has got a suspension, so fair enough. But the other 2 guys was Duplessis Karifi, and Peter Umanga Jensen. 2 Wellingtonians who would have made a big difference and could have potentially got them through to the semi-finals. And when you consider they didn't really play for the All Blacks, I think Wellington might be a bit pissed off. That stopped them from getting through, and they could have probably used those gun players as well.
Yeah, so they probably got a bone to pick with
so
Fozzie and the likes.
Not that I'm a Wellington fan, but yeah. So we're pretty much agreeing here. Auckland to beat Waikato. I think we're agreeing right through. In this last one here, we've got Tasman hosting the Bay of Plenty. How are you seeing that one?
Oh, mate, I have to go with Tasman on that one, even though I've got I'm a bit of a fan of, the Steamers. I've got to go with Tasman on that because my mind's telling me, no, Tasman know what finals footy is like now, and they'll be looking to prove a point and try to get to that final. I think they'll do it over Bay of Plenty.
Yeah, for the regular listeners will know that with our TAB account, Rog, that was his tip, Tasman to win it, and we went with that. So hopefully they can do it. I'm just looking at the form guide here, and Bay of Plenty, they've sort of roared into the semi-finals. They've won their last 5 games in a row. So yeah, and they beat some Waikato, they beat Canterbury, they beat some gun teams, Hawke's Bay. They beat 2 semi-finalists and Canterbury, who are perennial bloody high-end achievers. So yeah, they're in some really good form.
Have they left it too late though? We'll see.
Oh well, yeah. I'm hoping Tasman just because we've got $10 riding on that. But I think if there's going to be an upset, I would probably look at that one as the one. Yeah. Hold on. Did you watch that game on the weekend, Auckland against Canterbury? That was Canterbury on the verge. Yeah, Canterbury so close to getting relegated. That would have been amazing for me. That's the only reason why I brought that up, just as an Auckland fan. If we could have won the title and relegated Canterbury, that would be damn near the perfect season. It wasn't to be. Canterbury, they're too good. They've got so much fight in them, so good on them. Any Cantabrians that listen. So,
as an Aucklander, it would have been really nice to see.
Yeah, that would have been the ice, especially if they got relegated because of Auckland. That would have been the icing on the cake. But no, it wasn't to be. But some real good games coming up just for our listeners. So definitely check out those semi-finals, and we'll keep you posted as well on the podcast. So we haven't got anything else on the Mitre 10. We'll skip forward to probably something you know a lot more than I know about. But we have taken a keen interest in it on the podcast, which is Kanaloa. So they've begun legal proceedings issuing the NZRU with a breach notice. I'll let you talk about it because I know that you know a bit more about it than I do. But so at the NZRU, you've got 14 days to respond or something like that, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. So we're within 10 days now, I think.
Okay.
It was 14 days last Thursday or Friday.
Yeah.
And it's not looking good for New Zealand rugby. Put it that way.
Mm-hmm. So just for our listeners at home, Joey, can you just explain what the breach notice is that's been served and why they're serving it? So there's something with the bid that they weren't happy with it and a few other kind of issues, yeah?
Yeah. So basically, Kanaloa weren't given a fair go by New Zealand rugby, and basically what it looks like from the outside in is that they expected Kanaloa to just accept their decision to go with Moana Pacifica, who didn't even put a bid in and got automatic preference. So now it looks like it's pretty hard for New Zealand Rugby to now deny their part in this, because they've got a couple of rugby legends and BG and Ice back in Moana, when they are pretty conflicted due to their postings as former and current New Zealand Rugby Board members, respectively. I think New Zealand Rugby have dropped the ball massively here, and this is my own opinion. I think they'll use Moana Pacifica as a scapegoat when this all washes up. And the fact that Kanaloa's threatening legal action is a clear message to New Zealand Rugby that you can't get away with this kind of behaviour and expect the likes of Kanaloa to just keep quiet about it. And New Zealand Rugby, from my prediction anyway, is that their pride most likely won't allow them to give Kanaloa a license to play in Super Rugby. So they'll probably have to pay up some money, like Rugby Australia did with Izzy Folau. Don't know if anyone still remembers that, but it wasn't very long ago. And I totally understand how people feel about this, as I felt the same way until I found that looking deeper into it, it's more about New Zealand Rugby as an organisation, who should know better about things like due process than most other organisations, because of the success that they've had with the ABs, etc. I think the best way to explain how the legends Ice and BG are mixed up in the saga is that they will eventually become collateral damage, or could potentially become collateral damage. It's really unfortunate that these two legends of the game, who are proud PI people as well, and no doubt want to see PI rugby globalized in the way that it should be. It's unfortunate that they're mixed up in all this, but the key thing here is that they represent an organisation that's done wrong by breaking their own process and not being fair. So that's my take on it anyway. And I have one question for anybody who doesn't understand why an outfit like Kanaloa are actually fighting this. My question is, if there was only one bid from Pacifica, and it was backed by Ice and BG, and they followed due process, and then were declined by New Zealand Rugby to only then get the green light be given to say, let's say a team from the Coromandel, who didn't do anything, let alone submit a bid, do you think the Pacifica community would be up in arms crying foul and institutional racism? Would they then be backing the CEO of Kanaloa, Tracy, and her team against New Zealand Rugby, as they are now? So there you have it. That's a different way to look at it.
Yeah, no, that's a good analogy as well. So, I'm interested because I think BG Polly, well, any way better than I do. I don't even know the guy, but he's a lawyer, so he should know. He should know these intricacies. So I'm surprised that he's been caught up in it, if I'm being honest. Or did they just think maybe they could pull it off and get away with it, and just kind of law wouldn't do anything?
The way I look at it, I think to a large degree, the likes of BG and Ice, for all that they are doing for PI Rugby, I think other members in the organisation may have, and they may not have, pulled the wool over their eyes in terms of what is really going on. And I think it's right now, it's just a bit too late. I think their main focus may have been just focusing on backing Moana Pacifica. And I don't know if they had any knowledge that there wasn't a bid put in. It'd be pretty foolish of any of those reps to not know, and crying ignorance this late in the game, it's not going to look good either.
No. Yeah, I'm just interested, sort of a bit of crystal ball gazing. There's still a lot of things to be played out, but I'm wondering how you see it playing out. Because I know we spoke about this in our group chat, and I feel like the New Zealand Rugby Union, they've got away with this sort of lip service and all this other stuff for Polynesian and Pacific rugby before. So I feel that that could be part of the reason why they've been quite brazen about what they're doing, because they just feel like we always get away with it, so we can just sort of cut some corners and no one's really going to do anything about it until Kanaloa finally stepped up. But yeah, I'm just curious how you see this playing out, because when we spoke in the chat, part of me felt like because the New Zealand Rugby Union always gets away with it, that they'll get their Moana Pacifica bid to carry on and get across the line like they always basically get what they want when it comes to Pacific rugby. So I'm curious what you think is going to unfold. Just I
Oh,
know there's still a lot to happen, but
I'm glad you
that was
brought
sort of
this
my
up.
take. I still think Moana Pacifica is going to get over the line just for that reason. They always get away with what they want.
Oh, mate, I'm glad you brought this up. And the way I see it playing out and the way it may eventually play out, who knows if it'll come to be. But so look, there's probably two or three different options of what could potentially happen. One, as you say, New Zealand rugby could still truck on forward with Moana Pacifica, which they seem to have started by having this game against New Zealand Māori here in Hamilton, the city of the future.
Yes.
And therefore giving no option other than to take it to the court of law with Kanaloa. Or two, they could try to reach a out of court settlement where they come to terms and agreement on certain things. Or number three, which is what I predict will happen, or strongly hope will happen, is that they end up giving the license to Kanaloa to play in the Super Rugby 2022 or 2021 and retracting their decision to have Moana Pacifica as their preferred partner, as they've stated time and time again in the media. And the reason why I want that third option to happen is probably different to what people think. And it would be because, like you say, Stace, they've paid us lip service for well over 20 years, for the whole time that Super Rugby has been in existence. And they need to be taught a lesson. Unfortunately, we conditioned them by allowing them in the past. We conditioned them to think that they can get away with this type of behavior, and they have, because we've allowed them to. So they've showed us who they are. We need to now believe them. This is who they are, and we need to now do something about it. And we have an opportunity to do something about it. When I say we, I mean the Kanaloa side. If it turns out that Moana are the Pacifica team that come out of this as the team, then we'll back the Moana Pacifica team. Of course, we wouldn't say, oh no, we won't back them because Kanaloa, the team that we actually wanted them there or felt deserved to be there, aren't there. We'll back whichever of the two Pacifica teams get to be that team. But the way that New Zealand rugby have gone about their business, broken their own rules, no, mate. It's gone on for too long. And you've now got PI representatives in there who are going to look really stupid because of it, if not
Yep.
already.
Yep. It's interesting because, yeah, I think you're right. If they sort of just put a bid in, like, holy crap, that's sort of step number one for Moana. I think if they put a bid in and did it properly, and then they went with their own sort of Trojan horse, which they're chucking in there, this Moana Pacifica team, well, I think it's Trojan horse. I think that the New Zealand Rugby Union and the New Zealand Rugby Players Association are too heavily involved for them to not have, vested interest in serving themselves, which is why I'm more leaning towards the Kanaloa side of getting through. But I do think if they sort of just followed their own process, they might have been able to get away with it again. But because they haven't, maybe they will get caught out. It's going to be interesting to see. But I feel like I'm kind of aligning with you that I hope that Kanaloa gets the go ahead, just because I feel like they're more likely to help Polynesian and Pacific rugby, whereas I'm not sure about Moana Pacifica now, just because of the heavy New Zealand rugby union influence. I think that they're going to sort of help themselves out and then flick some crumbs to the Pacific teams. I wouldn't be surprised if they could pick a whole lot of Polynesian players, similar to that Pacific Islanders team that they had, and then the All Blacks picked the two best players out of that team.
Yeah.
So Sivi Vatu and Sione Lawaki.
Yeah.
So they could do the similar here. They'll take the two best guys and then they'll flick the crumbs to the Polynesians and say, "Hey, look, we helped you out."
That's exactly what they'll do. That's exactly what they'll do, and what they probably have intended to do from the get-go, which is why the Moana Pacifica, as a team, as a collective, as an organization, as a franchise, they speak more to the boxes that New Zealand rugby wants to tick for themselves, like you say, taking the best of our crop, the best of our talent who are playing in this top competition called Super Rugby. They get to pick from a team that they have control over. They won't have that same control over Kanaloa. That's for sure. So why wouldn't they want to? Why wouldn't anyone who's involved with New Zealand rugby and the talent coming through want to be aligned to Moana Pacifica? It ticks all their boxes.
Yeah, I like that word control, because to me that's what's really coming through here. NZRU, they want to be in control of it, but it's going to be quite interesting. I think New Zealand Rugby Union have been really quiet. So we've heard a lot from the Atingas and the Kanaloa people, where they have barely said a word. So I've been trying to find snippets of the chairman or anyone trying to come forward and say something on the subject, but they've just kept really quiet. So I wonder if they're going to try and spin it, because, like you said, you brought up that Māori game, so they can sort of say, "Hey, look, we're doing our bit. We created this game to help Polynesian rugby.
Yes.
We'll put a couple of Moana Pacifica games in up here. We'll pick a couple of the local, a couple of Samoan internationals or something, and we'll go from there." But it'll be interesting. Oh, got more issues there.
No, I'm still with you, but I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? I can still hear you.
Yep. Having a few technical issues here, boys, but it's really going to be real interesting to see how this all unfolds. And I'm glad, one thing I will say is I'm glad Kanaloa, yeah. So one thing I will say, I'm just real glad that Kanaloa have stuck to their guns and have gone the route. If they wants to get down and dirty and go the legal route, they're happy to go that route, as opposed to just what's happened in the past. Like you said, Islanders would just step back and say, "Oh, sweet, you guys can get away with it again." So if nothing else, it puts up the Islanders are prepared to fight for what they need, and they need this. So,
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Well, so I guess my closing for this. Oh, why do you want to keep talking about it?
No.
For me, in conclusion, Kanaloa, actually, compared to any other of these parties that may be involved, like New Zealand Rugby, they actually have legs to stand on in this argument, in this debacle, in this saga, if you like. And what I know of Kanaloa as an organisation, the people that are representing Kanaloa, including Tracy and her husband Matt, I know they won't back down. I know they'll take this as far as they need to take it to send a clear message that the little guy, you can keep him quiet sometime, you can't keep him quiet all the time. And this is one of those times where David versus Goliath, David really has to stand up for himself, because Goliath, New Zealand Rugby, will just keep doing the same thing over and over to suit their narrative, to tick their boxes, to get what they want for the betterment of New Zealand Rugby, not Pacifica Rugby. Let's not get that twisted.
They have no interest in seeing the game grow or anything. They just want to hold their position hold their dominant position,
Yeah.
regardless of what. If it holds the game back overall, they're okay with it, just as they can keep their position. But this is a story that keeps on going, and yeah, like you said, I'm glad Kanaloa are sticking to their guns, and we'll keep following this. And for the listeners, as well, there we'll keep you guys posted as well. We've also got some stuff on our Facebook page as well, and some of our social media. I know, Joey, you've shared a lot of stuff on yours, and I've just been resharing it on the Counter-Ruck pages. So definitely keep an eye out and keep on following, and we'll keep following that story for sure. But yeah, we're going to move forward on to Keith Quinn. We'll talk about Keith Quinn before we finish up. We've got some breaking news. Joey's got some breaking news for us with Keith Quinn. Do you have heard some comments just recently in the last hour or so?
So Keith Quinn, I don't know if he had a think to himself or even had a drink with himself today and decided today's the day I'm going to end my career. He's come out with a tweet, and Twitter's one of those platforms for anyone in this world where they can reach a really broad audience. And Keith Quinn, he's also known as Mr. Rugby in New Zealand because he has all the stats from all the games in the past, especially All Blacks games. He knows everything. He's kind of like a human almanac, if you like. And the tweet that has got a lot of people riled up in the rugby circles, he sent it today at just before 7 p.m., which is about a couple of hours ago. He wrote, these are his words. What's happening to blokeism? In the TV news the last few days, Dustin Johnson, Lewis Hamilton, and Puma rugby players and coach all crying their eyes out. Would the sight of All Blacks wearing pink boots have moved Pine Tree Meads? I doubt it. Harden up, blokes of today. Yeah, that's his tweet. And he's getting a lot of flack for it.
Wow.
Maybe decided today's the day I'm going to end my career as a broadcaster. Well, he's already a retired broadcaster. He's retired, but he still follows rugby, and I suppose he's talking from his true self in his armchair at home. And his true self is unfortunately stuck in the last century where blokey blokes used to reside.
Yeah. Where blokes used to bottle up all their feelings and their emotions, and then until they exploded in a real negative way.
Exactly.
It's really the timing, because when we got our closing thoughts coming up later on, and I was going to talk about similar, like how rugby looked at it as being this macho game, but because it's November, which is Movember, and part of the thing they're doing for Movember is raising awareness around mental health in men, because this suicide in New Zealand is one of the leading causes of death in New Zealand amongst the men. So for him to come up with this blokey bloke thing from yesteryear, mate, that's completely done the wrong path. And in Movember, when that's when they're talking about raising awareness of mental health for men for suicide prevention, that's like horrible thoughts at the wrong time. Keith Quinn, I was a fan of yours, but no, I'm still a fan. You said the wrong thing. You better delete your tweet, issue an apology. But you're a great commentator, but you're stuck in the wrong time zone at the moment, mate.
I wonder what Sir John Kirwan thinks of Keith Quinn now, because he's a big advocate
that's a really
mental
good
health.
question. He's one of the faces of mental health in New Zealand, and men's mental health too, especially. So, yeah, they should get them two in a room to have a chat. Maybe John to JK can explain to him, because sometimes when you get to a certain age, you get sort of quite stuck in your ways. So maybe he's just stuck in his own time warp there. Old Keithy Quinn. But yeah, just some interesting thoughts on Keith Quinn, the one of the great commentators of New Zealand rugby. So it's sad to see him drinking and tweeting. You shouldn't tweet while you drink, mate. Come on.
It's weird
Yeah,
because the
but
irony
Joey,
is,
mate, we got our what do we got? Our TAB account. So we've got our TAB account last week. Oh yeah, carry on.
oh, I was just going to say the irony is he represents
Yeah.
funeral home, Cigna life insurance, and he's talking all that mess because he's
Yeah,
insured.
yeah, that's right.
So TAB account tip.
Yeah, yeah. Mm. Yep. So yeah, so our TAB account. Last week we actually did all right. So there was only two tips last week, which was England to win by 13 plus, which happened, and counties to get a win, which is Roger's weekly tip. But this time it actually came through. So we picked up $41 on our multi. So mate, not bad, not bad. I'll take that. We'll take that $41 and add it to our account. But Joey, mate, have you got any tips for us for the week for our TAB account? Our cheeky $10 we put on every week.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to do a multi for the Mitre 10 Cup or for rugby in general. I've got Otago beating Northland. I've got Australia still beating Argentina.
Yeah, we'll do a multi. That's where the money is.
Yep. I've got Auckland.
Yep.
Auckland
Yeah,
beating
anything, man,
Waikato.
just lay it on us. We'll put it on.
Yeah, Auckland beating Waikato. Got Hawke's Bay
Yeah,
beating Taranaki.
yeah.
Got Tasman beating Bay of Plenty for sure. That's about it. Unless you want to go into the Guinness Pro 14.
Yeah, I actually agree with all those calls, though. So
If you want to add one more to your multi and
if
you're
you
not
got
sure
something
about the
for it,
Guinness
we'll put
Pro,
it in. I agree.
the only
Yeah,
one I'm confident in, well, there's two that I'm confident in the Guinness Pro 14 at present would be Leinster, who are regarded as, up there always
I
in
know
that side of the
nothing about
world.
it, to be honest. But if you got a tip, we'll put it in there.
Yeah, Leinster to beat Edinburgh, Ulster to beat Zebra, even though I've got my cousin Jimmy playing for Zebra, and Cardiff to beat Benetton.
Yeah,
I think that's all the
nice,
rugby that's shown this week.
nice. It looks good. Yeah, we've got we're on a bit of a roll for the TAB account, so this one looks like it could be a big multi, and we could be in some serious cash here, boys.
End of year party, you reckon?
Thanks there, Joe. Yeah, add it to the Christmas funds if we take this one out. But yeah, I agree with all those semi-final tips actually. So I'm happy with those bets, and I will add these Pro 14 ones on as well, just to get a bit more cash. But yeah, we're just about to wrap up our podcast there. Also, we'll just get some final thoughts from you, just on whatever.
Um, Final thoughts. I'm thankful that Argentina have got the rugby world talking with that historic win over the All Blacks. And I think that's where it ends because Australia have had some time now to have a break and really look over that All Blacks versus Argentina game and come away with some actionable data.
Yeah.
Also on the Kanaloa saga, everyone can have opinions and everyone can have their say, but at the end of the day, the law is the law. It's there for a reason. It's there to be adhered to. And if you're breaking your own processes and your own rules as an organisation and you get the law involved, the law will tell you what should have been done and will punish you accordingly.
Yep. Yep, I agree with that. So that Kanaloa is going to be a real interesting story. So I'm really happy that we're going to keep following it. But yeah, I agree with everything you said there. I'll just say what I was going to say anyway, even before the Keith Quinn stuff. Say Keith Quinn, come on, mate. But yeah, I know rugby is often looked at as being this macho type of game, and Keith Quinn, he's had his bit to say on it. But it's important to remember that this is the month of November, or Movember, I should say now, and it's about raising awareness for mental health in men. And also that, yeah, like I said earlier, suicide is a leading cause of death in New Zealand amongst men. So please, if you do need help, don't try to be a tough guy like Keith Quinn suggests. Reach out to someone.
Yeah.
And yeah, that Movember is a really good cause as well. So if you can donate and support that cause, please do. Yeah, I just want to, on that note, thank all our listeners for joining us for another episode of the Counter Ruck. We're available on the usual podcast platforms: Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and also our YouTube channel. So check us out there, and a few others. So keep listening or watching and providing that feedback for us. So Joey, mate, thanks for jumping on and sharing your rugby knowledge and your enthusiasm. And
Thank you.
Cams, mate, thanks for doing the fact checking. And we'll be back again next week. Cheers, boys.
Thank you.